Well, hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Chuck Reif. I'm Tessitura's chief engineer and one of its co-founders, as you've heard. I'm a white person in my late 60s with gray hair and beard. I use the pronouns he and him, and today I'm wearing a white shirt and blue pants. I'm going to apologize for two things right up front. I was at one of those parties last night with a lot of yelling. My voice is a little gravelly, so don't worry, I will make it through. That part will be easy. I'm also going to apologize for reading some of what I have to say today. That is really just a preemptive attempt to keep me from choking up. I did spend an awful lot of time thinking about what I wanted to say today. As you know, it's pretty easy for me to stand up here and talk about features and screens and buttons and reports. I don't spend a lot of time talking about myself. But it all starts by saying that I stand here with just a ton of gratitude and, as you can tell, more than a fair amount of emotion. I thought this might be a good time to tell you a little bit about the interesting journey that brought me here, because looking back, I can see what this journey has done for me, and I think it probably has some importance and relevance for all of us. So bear with me for a few minutes, and I promise it will all make sense. Now, if you had asked my mom who she thought was the most negative and cynical child she had ever met, she would have had to admit that it was her oldest son. And she would have said that this started when I was about 3 years old. She would have been right. I was an arguer. I honestly thought that most of the world outside my brain was stupid. And I made sure to let people know how I felt. And thus began my career as a cynic. But now I want to tell you about something that happened when I was getting ready to enter high school. On the first tour of our new school, we were walking through the auditorium, and the guide took us backstage. And immediately, something inside me lit up. I didn't really know what it was, but it just felt somehow magical. And so much cool-looking equipment. Now, very lucky for me, our school had a really amazing theater program. And I started working on shows there just as soon as I could. There was always something about being backstage that made me feel in the right place, and honestly, just a little bit less cynical. Looking back, I've always wondered what it was about the theater that made this difference for me. Working on shows was always a place where I felt I needed to be serious and bring my very best game. I think there's always been a part of me that secretly honored and envied artists, and wishing that I had more of that talent. And here was a place where my particular skills could be part of that world. Now, at first, all I wanted to do was run the lighting board. It was big, had lots of wires, big handles, no computerized lighting boards back then. And then I realized that if I was the stage manager, I got to run all the things. And that was it. From that point on, my goal in life was to be a professional stage manager. And I spent the next 4 years stage managing, not just at school, but at an outdoor summer theater and local dinner theaters. All right, now a small break in the action. I had a mentor in the theater in those days who I admired absolutely. And one day he advised me not to study theater in college. He told me that if I wanted to be a professional stage manager, I should just start working because I wasn't going to learn anything more about that in college. Now that was some scary advice to a 17-year-old. So instead, I did go to college, and believe it or not, I have my degree in elementary education, and I minored in music and theater. And in the course of that, I arranged to do my final student teaching at a small primary school in London. And I ended up staying there for nearly 2 years, eventually working as a social worker. And I left London only when the government kindly asked me to vacate the premises for lack of a real work permit. So what to do next? And out of the blue, one of those the universe has plans moments happened. A friend of mine, who was a dancer in New York, got cast in a national tour and a Broadway revival of The Music Man, starring Dick Van Dyke. Now, my friend heard that the producer of that show was looking for someone who could be both an assistant stage manager and tutor the 3 kids in the cast. So obviously that person had to be someone with both a teaching certificate and some stage management experience. And I seemed to fit that bill pretty well. So about a month after leaving London, I found myself in New York City with my equity card in rehearsals. And by the way, one of those kids that I ended up tutoring was 7-year-old Christian Slater in his very first professional role. He was not a very good student. So I worked as a professional stage manager on Broadway and on the road for 7 years. And one of the greatest things I learned during that time was this. If I was ever tired or frustrated, doing the 200th performance of the same show, forgetting what city we were in, listening yet again to how someone's makeup mirror lights just weren't bright enough, all I really had to do was go out and sit in the house for an act or two. Watch the audience, feel the reaction, cynicism erased. Another great thing about that time, stage managers were just starting to move from touring with IBM Selectric typewriters to using the very early first personal portable computers. And that was yet another step that led me to be standing here. So a few more twists and turns, I taught myself some elementary programming, and I found myself working in the marketing and development department at the Metropolitan Opera, putting in their very first PC network. And while I was not, or am not now, a huge opera fan, anytime I felt frustrated or overwhelmed at work, all I had to do was go downstairs, sit in the house after the afternoon rehearsal was over, and there I would watch the day crew change over the set for that evening's performance. Art love restored. Now, eventually the Met asked me to be the project manager for this thing that seemed wildly improbable. An opera company was going to write a unified CRM fundraising ticketing marketing system. As you can guess, my cynical side immediately said this was a terrible idea. And I am so fortunate that by then I learned that if I could just shake off that part of myself, something amazing might happen. And now, 29 years later, I stand here. Now, we're all prone to say that journeys like this are some combination of hard work and luck, being in the right place at the right time, and of course that is true. I also have to acknowledge that I was born into a fair amount of luck. White, middle class, male, all those things. All the more reason to remember that cynicism just should not have a place inside me. Now, if you ask my colleagues what it's like working with me, their answer will probably contain the word skeptic. Some of them will even say Eeyore. One boss that I had at the opera told me that he knew the best way to manage me was to raise an idea, let me tell him that it wasn't possible or wouldn't work, and then just say, okay, thanks. Then he would wait 2 or 3 days until I came back to say, okay, I thought about it, and maybe there is a way that we could work that out. And yes, it's hugely embarrassing when someone has you that figured out. But it was really helpful for me to hear that. Now, of course, it's also the same pattern that happened when this idea of writing our own software at the Metropolitan Opera was first raised. My first thought, this is a horrible idea. There is no way this is ever going to work. Obviously, I came around to it, and I'm really glad that I did. In the end, I guess I'll just live with the skeptic label. I'll remember that I have a healthy dose of that and be really glad that it rarely tips over into that dreaded cynic role. I'm really happy to have learned that a cynic says, that's a dumb idea. And a skeptic's real job is to say, I'm sure there's a better way to do that. And for that, I fully thank the world of arts and culture that I've been able to swim in most of my life. Arts and culture has been my personal cynicism antidote. For the last 24 years, since we first started this amazing organization, I've been able to walk into your magnificent venues, and I still get excited every single time, like I did walking backstage all those years ago in high school. And who could ask for more than that in a job? All right, a few more thoughts and thank yous. And this is where it's going to get tricky. I have had the great privilege to work with amazing colleagues over the years, and I have learned so much from them. When you are a virtual company like we are, you have to take special care to find ways to stay connected, and I will value those connections forever. You should all know that you are in the very best of hands, and thank you to every single one of them for making me feel special. A special shout out to Tessitura's other co-founder, Jack Rubin. Jack taught me to think big and never, or at least very rarely, take no for an answer. You may have heard the story that early on we challenged each other to guess how many members we would have after 5 years. We wrote our guesses down and locked them away. I guessed something like 20. He guessed something like 200. We were well past Jack's number after 5 years. Over the last 4 years, I have had the honor of working really closely with Andrew and the executive team here. This group has grown into a great example of how a guiding coalition should work. One great perk of my position here has been the chance to meet and work with our board members over the years. Now, the amount of time and effort that these people put into their roles is inspiring, and the experience and brain power that we are able to leverage with them is not something we could ever put a price on. A big thank you to my family, who, especially in the early days, put up with endless travel and lots of late nights, and also endured the fact that they could never really explain my job. After my youngest daughter was hired at one of our members, she came to this conference a few years ago and she told me, "I thought you just sat in the house typing and talking on the phone all day long." But now I see there's a little bit more to it. To my partner, Kristen, who was here from very early on, has guided me through many presentations here on this stage and is now helping me navigate this whole retirement thing. Thank you. And to all of you, past and present users. When I'm finally able to explain to people what I do, they often say something like, "Wow, it must feel good to have built a business that big." And I am able to honestly say, yes, that's nice. But what is really gratifying is to have watched so many people build or advance their careers using Tessitura. I have watched marketing professionals, marketing assistants, learn to write their first Tessitura report, study a little SQL, a gateway drug in the tech world if there ever was one, become the on-site expert, and then realize that their passion is to become a software engineer. Some of those people came to work here to improve the very software that originally inspired them. I've watched box office temps become the Tessitura administrator and then travel the world using their expertise to work on multiple continents. And I see those same people now leading local user groups and teaching others. 24 years ago, I told Jack I would get really excited if I ever saw an ad that said something like, "Tessitura Experience a Plus." And now, of course, that experience is highly valued. And our network has a global initiative to teach and mentor budding arts administrators from underrepresented backgrounds with our Career Accelerator program. Whoa. Yeah. You should all, share, as you do, share my pride that together we've built an organization that so values that role. All right, let me wrap this up here. As I look out at all of you after 3 days of connection and learning, I hope you feel what I feel. I hope you feel, as Andrew said on Monday, how important it is for this community to come together, especially in these days. I hope you feel that whatever cynicism you might have had when you arrived here has been replaced with a renewed sense of purpose and pride in what we all do. I hope that you feel that whatever cynicism might well up inside you when you read the headlines is replaced by a reminder that every day your job is to put understanding, beauty, and deeper meaning into our world. And I hope you feel invigorated, knowing that you have a network of peers with whom to share your ideas, thoughts, struggles, and victories. I think we can all agree that this conference and this network that we've all built together is one of those rare places where we can all find this. And so, thank you much for everything.